What's up guys, my name is Carl and welcome to Tech Hunter. On this channel I check out a lot of PC hardware as well as other day-to-day tech to make your lives that little bit easier. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. In today's video I'm going to be checking out a PC case that seems to have it nearly all covered. With full spectrum RGB fans, a PWM fan hub and controller, a tempered glass side panel, plenty of drive support, full-size ATX motherboard compatibility, a PSU shroud, and room for growth in the future. At £80, the Gamemax Aurora could well be your next PC case. So I reached out to Gamemax about a month ago, asking if they wanted to work with me on any new projects. Thankfully, they agreed, and were happy enough to send me out this chassis. As of May the 1st, 2018, Gamemax are launching a whole new lineup of products, including a couple of new PC cases like this one, as well as another one, I think it's the Chroma, I believe. So if you're interested in what else they have to offer, check them out in the description down below. I'll have their website listed down there. But let's talk about the specific case they sent out to me, the Aurora. The Aurora packs a lot into its affordable price, making it great value for money. You get 3 great dual ring full spectrum RGB fans that are not only nice to look at, actually perform really well, and aren't loud and annoying like so many included case fans. Those 3 fans are connected to a PWM fan hub and controller that allows you to connect up to a total of 10 devices. The fans are also completely remote controllable, whether you want to adjust the color, of which there are 8 to choose from, adjust the mode, of which there is also 8 of them to choose from, or even increase/decrease the fan speed. You can do all of that with this little remote controller. Really good idea if you ask me. Just do your best to keep that remote safe, otherwise you have to cycle through the colors using the button at the front of the case, which is a lot more time consuming. Speaking of the front of the case, the power button is easy to spot. It's right in the middle of that glossy black acrylic front panel, which is a bit of a fingerprint nightmare, though thankfully Gamemax include a cloth with the case. The power button also lights up green once the case has been powered on. Unfortunately though, you are stuck with green as the power button is not RGB and cannot be adjusted. Moving on to the rest of the I/O, there are also 2 USB 2.0 ports, a single USB 3.0 port, microphone and headphone jacks, and the reset button is actually non-existent and is the button that controls the RGB inside the case. Looking around the rest of the case, you'll find 2 magnetic dust filters, one up top and another down below for the PSU. And another interesting feature of this case, on the right hand side, the metal panel has a few cutouts for extra airflow to keep things a little cooler inside the case. The left hand side is that big beautiful tempered glass side panel. Though it's a little too tinted for me personally, I like the idea of easily being able to see inside my PC once it's turned off, but it does add to the stealthy look of this case. All of this just sounds some rather imposing stands at the bottom, giving your case a lot of room between it and the surface below. For £80, this is sounding pretty good so far. Now it's time to open up that glass panel and see what's inside. To do so, you just need to remove the 4 thumb screws holding it on. Be careful the panel doesn't fall off and smash, because mine came very close to doing just that, as the screw threads that the panel sits on are quite shallow and a bit unstable once the screws are removed. But now we're inside, we can get a look at what's going on inside. You can see the fans, which look great, other than the middle. I feel like a nice Gamemax logo would have been great here. Instead of a sticker with a code and voltage, just to give it that little bit of an extra edge and even a little bit more branding. I wouldn't have criticized them for that. Inside you can also see plenty of cutouts and grommets for routing cables, which is great, but unfortunately the grommets are sat in very loosely. Either the holes they're in are too big or the grommets are too small, and as a result come out really easily when poking cables through. This isn't a massive problem as they're easy to slide back in once your cable is in position, but still a tad annoying. Behind the main power button you can see there's quite a lot of space in that front panel area. The only intake for air would be at the bottom, but populating this area will also cover up the big white blob of the power button. I could forgive them and let it be if it was black, but the fact that it's white, it's just so obvious and it stands out. It just looks a little bit silly unless you've got it covered up by some fans. Moving back to fans, the front and top of the case does have support for a 280/240mm radiator, and the front also has no fans, which I might recommend you populate because the included fans are all set for exhaust, so there's technically no intake. but my components did stay cool even without intake fans. More on that later. There was also room to mount 3 fans at the bottom of the case on that PSU shroud too. The Aurora supports up to 4 drive locations, 2 SSD mounting positions on the right hand side of the motherboard, and 2 hard drives down below in the shrouded area. The hard drives are incredibly easy to fit onto the included bracket and require no tools or screw. Annoyingly though, the hard drive cage isn't removable. It's riveted in place and makes cable management down below an absolute nightmare. Even with a modular power supply, it doesn't seem to make much difference and doesn't seem to make it any easier, having a couple less cables down there. GPU mounting is also a bit of a strange one, as only one of the 7 expansion slots has a screw in it and it is replaceable. The others have to be snapped off and can't be put back on once removed. But on the upside, the motherboard installation is a piece of cake, as the Aurora has standoffs already installed and some spares depending on your motherboard. Right, so let's take a look at the build process and see how it all went together. So now that you've seen me build inside this case, let's talk about using the case and how cool or hot your components are likely to get inside. I used my Ryzen 5 2400G because I wanted to make use of it. I overclocked it to a happy 3.8 GHz on all cores, and I paired this with the AMD Wraith Spire cooler from my Ryzen 5 1600. And I set my RAM frequency to 3000 MHz, coupling that with my recently acquired GTX 1070 Founders Edition. I was expecting for things to get really toasty inside this case. especially considering the lack of intake fans. But under gaming loads, my GPU never got above 83 degrees, which is a common temperature for Founders Edition cards anyway. My CPU, whilst gaming, also never got above 65 degrees, which I have to admit, I was stumped by. So I thought I'd try things that are a little bit harder to push the CPU. So I started up Cinebench R15 and I started the benchmark. I ran it a couple times consecutively to keep some heat in the CPU, and it only ever seemed to peak at around 70 degrees after running the test. Up next, I tried IDA 64. I started a system stability test, stressing the CPU and FPU, and left it to run, expecting that it would cause some heat issues if I left it alone, so I thought I'd go grab something to eat. When I returned about 18 minutes later, it was sat happily at 76 degrees, and I had hit a maximum of 80 degrees. I know the Ryzen 5 2400G is hardly the most power hungry, being a 65 watt chip, and also hardly the most heat inducing CPU, but I was expecting much higher temperatures considering the lack of intake fans. So I decided to investigate a little bit further. I added 2 more fans to the front of the case to see what would happen. I picked up 2 Be Quiet Silent Wings 3 fans and started my tests again. I also thought I'd make the best possible situation I could. So I left the side panel off and removed the front panel just to see how things would go, see if it would keep things a little bit cooler. As expected, my CPU temperatures did drop by an amazing 6 degrees. With 2 new fans and all the panels back on, I thought I'd try it again and see what it's like with it all closed up and the 2 extra fans. I dropped 1 degree. I saved myself 1 degree by adding 2 fans. So it depends on the hardware you've got in there and how hard you're pushing it as to whether you need to add these 2 fans in the front of the case. But for a lot of people, I'd imagine the 3 included fans, like me, in my system I built in here, would be absolutely perfect. Overall, the Gamemax Aurora is a great case. It offers a plethora of expandability for the future, whether it's more fans, more drives, or even water cooling. This case seems to have it all covered. It looks great, it's super easy to build in, other than a few minor niggles, and they've managed to pack all of this inside for just £80. The Aurora is a case that I'd happily recommend to anybody. I had no real issues with the case, and if you have a lot of black gloss or glass furniture, this Aurora will fit in really nicely. Anyway though guys, that is the end of the video. As always, if you like this kind of stuff, feel free to click that like button. If you didn't, click that dislike button, but leave your comments down below letting me know what you thought about today's video. And if you decide my face hasn't offended you, feel free to click that subscribe button so we can see each other again soon. Thanks for watching guys. Cheers.